I read a story recently that made me just think Square Enix is absolutely delusional. Now, listen, I love Square Enix just as much as the next gamer out there. They've made some of my favorite games of all time. But this story that we're about to talk about with Forspoken shows you exactly why Square Enix has had financial issues, shows you exactly why the Luminous team was rolled into Square Enix, shows you exactly why they are changing their president and CEO. This company is delusional. And I don't like to say this, and I don't like to rant and go into people this type of way or companies. We all make mistakes. We all do things that not necessarily we would like to say that we did. We've all had issues before. But I cannot for the life of me think why Square Enix thought, if this report is true, that spending $100 million on Forspoken, a PS5 and PC game, exclusive console-wise, the PS5, was a good idea. There is nothing that you can sit here and tell me on how this game was even conceived and the themes of this type of game in terms of the length and what the game is to say $100 million is a good idea. This company is delusional and they need to be knocked down a peg or two or three, which is what's happening. But we'll see how it works out in the end. Let's get into it here, guys. So there was an article, or more like articles, that have been going around saying Forspoken took $100 million to make. Now, this information comes from lead writer Allison Reimer. So let's talk about this. This is from the Game World Observer. They had this to say: how much money could Square Enix spend on Forspoken? The Japanese publisher hasn't disclosed Forspoken's budget. However, the figure appeared on lead writer Allison Reimer's LinkedIn page, spotted by TweakTown. Now, in the section, she wrote about her work on the game, saying that she, quote, spearheaded the story behind Forspoken, which costs over $100 million to make. When describing her work at Luminous Productions, Reimer once again described Forspoken as a, quote, fantasy AAA video game, $100 million plus budget. So it's not just $100 million, it's $100 million plus on this game. Now, once again, it's not an official source from Square Enix. It is someone who works there, but it's something that could very easily be called out as a lie, since she's putting it on a public LinkedIn page. Obviously, she's looking for some more work or something else to do. So if she was to be hired by someone else, for example, they can easily call up Square Enix and get like the official details in terms of it from a undisclosed type of thing. Like you would talk to like a business, right? One business to another, cross-checking references that they do for work all the time. I used to be a recruiter, so I know all about this. So I don't think she would necessarily lie on her official LinkedIn page. Now, many people do lie about stuff on there, but once again, in the gaming industry, obviously it's one of those things to where you can disprove it if you're boldly putting that out there, considering so many people worked on Forspoken. Now, last week, MST Financial Senior Analyst David Gibson shared his own estimate of Forspoken's production budget. Shoutouts to David Gibson. We follow each other on Twitter. He's a good guy. He said the game cost more than 70 billion yen to make. So that's around 75 million or so. And quote, most of that is likely to be written off. So Square Enix necessarily isn't on the hook for all of that. So we don't necessarily know exactly how much, but I'd even say 75 million is too much for Forspoken. Honestly, it's too much for that type of game. And yes, I'm not in the midst of game development. I'm not someone that has intricate knowledge in how these things work. However, the laundry list of things that I will go into is why I'm saying that Square Enix is delusional. That they are delusional here. That Forspoken would get this type of money just boggles my mind. And it shows you why they've had so many issues just over the years and decades, because this isn't the first time that we've seen Square Enix just blow crazy amounts of money on things that are just like, wow, that didn't work. So we do know that Square Enix officially confirmed that Forspoken sales have been, quote, lackluster, and that it poses a considerable downside risk to the company's full year revenue. Now we know that they've disbanded Luminous Productions, they merged the team with other people there to help out with future AAA games. So if this game was successful in any type of way, I'm pretty sure Luminous would have got another shot. They'd be working on some DLC. But I will say this real quick to Ms. Allison Reimer. I don't think bragging about Forspoken is something that you should be doing like crazy, considering the story in that game was not necessarily well received, nor was it a high Metacritic game when it comes down to the story and some of the settings and stuff like that. So, I mean, it is what it is. It is subjective, but I've played the game and yeah, it's not necessarily the best story out there, but hey, it is what it is. I'm pretty sure there's some people that like that style, but the way that they set it up with her transporting to a different world and stuff like that, people don't necessarily like stories like that. And for a new IP, it is what it is. Once again, I love Square Enix, but they are. Valkyrie Elysium. So you have an established IP that probably got a fraction of that 75 million for promotion for the game itself. Valkyrie Elysium could have been so much better than what it was. So they left that game out to die for the most part, right? That game did not have the budget that it needed. I mean, the way that it looked on the PS5, clearly they weren't taking advantage of it. When people saw that game, they're like, yo, this looks like a really nice PlayStation 3 game. And even like with some of the tech and the rendering with that, it just wasn't up to snuff. So you left that game out to dry with its budget, right? That's one thing. And Valkyrie Elysium, the Valkyrie Profile series, has been around for decades. It's been around for a while now, and that's how it was treated. And Forspoken gets a red carpet with 100 million, 75 to 100 million. Goodness gracious. Now, next up, Neo, The World Ends With You. We all know that this game had a shoestring budget, or the budget was taken and put some into the anime, some into the development, and there was nothing left over to even talk about the game. Square Enix didn't even want to talk about this game. So the production budget and getting maybe people to stream the game, maybe even paying for some RPG streamers for some promotions, there was nothing on this. They did literally nothing. They left this game to die and say, hey, you know what? Well, you guys asked for it and now we brought it to you guys and it didn't sell. So we're never going to make this franchise ever again. That's what it seemed like to me. Like they just put it out there because people were asking for it. And of course, The World Ends With You on the Switch. The first game did good enough. They made a lot of money off of that because it was just a somewhat competent port of the mobile version of the game, right? So they put that out there, made some money for them. They decided to make another one and really didn't invest into the game at all. Next up, Chrono Cross The Radical Dreamers. This game clearly had no budget because it launched in a state that you should never launch a game that old in. It launched in a state to where it just wasn't good enough. They clearly didn't have enough time or the resources to make sure everything was good. And it took them so long. A year later, they fixed this. Goes to show you that they probably had like one dude working on it the whole time or something like that afterwards to fix the game. Once again, no promotion, no budget. They've done this again, at least recently, with a separate game, and that was the Secret of Mana remake. The original Secret of Mana, or more like the second game, Seiken Densetsu 2, that was on the Super Nintendo, remade. It was such a shoestring, like no money whatsoever, but such a bad remake of an epic, iconic game. So with Chrono Cross, they do the same thing here. Very low effort. Fixed it now, but very low effort. Don't want to put any money into it. Now we move into Chrono Trigger. Everybody and their mom has been asking for a new Chrono Trigger game, a new Chrono Trigger universe game, a new something to do with this franchise, because it's been on ice. It's been dead for decades now at this point. Chrono Cross was the last thing that we got, and that's a PS1 game, okay? So they've done nothing with the Chrono Trigger brand, and Chrono Trigger is quite possibly, when it comes to just like lore and when it comes to just like the mystique, not lore, but the mystique of what Square Enix has. Chrono Trigger is seen to many people as the greatest game of all time. Now they have Final Fantasy, they have other stuff, Dragon Quest, that also is in high remarks, but many people see Chrono Trigger as the golden standard of RPGs, and still to this day is many millions of gamers' favorite RPG of all time and holds up incredibly well. What do we get? Well, we get nothing. We get nothing. We got a crappy PC port, which it took them 4 years to update. We got a random update, I think last year, 4 years after it came out, but it was a crappy PC port from like the mobile port, from like whatever, you know, like they just don't care. They just don't care. And Chrono Trigger is such a god tier franchise. It's such a god tier game, and they've done nothing with this game in so long when it comes to a new title or when it comes to something with it that's substantial and for the fans. Nothing. How is this business logic but Forspoken? Forspoken is worth 100 million to 75 million or whatever the case is, but Chrono Trigger can't get a bone. Chrono Cross and Chrono Trigger get absolutely nothing. Get put in a quarter budget like the pizza place or like the burger place or whatever, they have those little vending machines where you put in a quarter and it pops out some type of little toy or some candy. That's essentially the budgets for all of these games here. You can probably combine all the budgets for these games and it's not even a fraction of what they spent on Forspoken. You've got to be kidding me with this. And once again, I know it sounds like I'm being really rough, and I kind of am, but I am shocked at this. I am shocked because I thought that maybe it was cheaper than that. I knew it was a AAA budget type of game, but 100 million, 75 million? These prices are outrageous for what was put out, what the end product ended up being. Now, no Xenogears. They've had this awesome IP. It's called Xenogears. They don't care. Leave it alone. Nothing. No budget whatsoever for anything Xenogears. Okay? Little to no marketing for the DioField Chronicle. Pretty much nothing. Just shove out all the games. Also, Harvestella. Shove out the games. That had a little bit more, but just get them out. Yeah, Tactics Ogre. Pretty good game, but just get it out. Just get the games out. This is delusional from Square Enix. This is delusional from them. This proves it to me that Forspoken would get so much more. Probably way more than all of these games combined. And the push and the marketing, they're talking about it. It's getting 10-minute overview trailers. It's just getting bam, left and right, being shown off here and there. They're really gassing it up. Meanwhile, you have a bunch of franchises and games that I know for a fact could outsell whatever the heck Forspoken did, which I don't think Forspoken did very well. I think it did under 1 million units by a long shot. To me, this is a failure of mass proportions, that you can have this many blunders business-wise, this many issues with the various different games. I talked about what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different things. But yet, Forspoken is the game that gets the budget and stuff like that. It just blows my mind. And like I said, this is the reason why Square Enix has told their investors that they messed up. This is the reason why Square Enix is changing their president. This is the reason why Square Enix has gotten a lot of problems or a lot of issues. They've been going through some stuff. Now, it's not all doom and gloom, boys and girls. They've got Final Fantasy 16 coming out. That's going to be really good. Octopath Traveler 2 recently dropped. That's also really good. And they also have Final Fantasy 7 Remake Part 2. That's also going to be really good. And whatever other surprises they have for the year. So it's not all bad. I'm looking forward to FF16 and I'm looking forward to their games. I think that they have that on lock. We have Dragon Quest 3 HD 2D Remake that's coming as well. We have Dragon Quest 12 as well, which I recently talked about. So there's some good stuff coming up. And I think that Square Enix is going to make the right adjustments here and there with some mistakes, you know, who knows where. But overall, I could tell you, if I first saw Forspoken and I looked at it, I'm like, not so sure. But 100 million, 75 million for that? Square Enix is delusional. And I really hope that they make some changes. They make some core fundamental changes. But we'll see. It's their business. They'll run it the way that they want to. So what are your thoughts on this, guys? If you haven't seen my other videos where I talk about some recent stuff with Square Enix, about the whole JRPG controversy, or even some of the other stuff with Square Enix where I've discussed, this is like my third video on Square Enix in the past like week and a half or two. So goodness gracious. So check out those videos. They'll be linked right here on the page. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you for the next video. Peace out.